Hi, everybody. Todd Dammit Kerns here. Today, I'm very excited. I've been able to dodge this sausage party a little bit lately. An amazing bass player who I've gotten to know as I've been filling in for her, which has been a lot of fun with Steven Adler and the guys, Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses. Tanya is originally from Ireland, has an amazing story. Started out playing in all kinds of Irish traditional music, got into the Riverdance, the touring Riverdance show, eventually landing in the US, playing with people like Dee Snider from Twisted Sister and Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses, and a bunch more. She's an amazing person, a huge activist for animals, and just a huge superhero of a person. Ladies and gentlemen, Tanya OCallaghan.
There you go.
I love that really serious voice.
I
This
know.
meeting is being recorded.
Just so you know, because
Just so there's no violation here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're clear that you are aware that this is being recorded.
All
Like,
bass players are aware now.
yeah, it's like an interrogation now. It just seems so like, okay,
I
well,
love it.
I wasn't prepared for that kind of seriousness.
But yeah, I was laughing. It's very witchy. I'm like,
it's
a woman.
You've got like a witch's brew happening over there. Yeah, it's just a humidifier.
I'm a fan of diffusing because diffusing fights, diffusing issues, diffusing essential oils.
Look at that! Wow, I didn't realize it was so far-reaching, but there you go. That's amazing.
But yeah, I have to put some humidity in for the poor guitars. Oh my god.
Oh, yeah, we were just talking about that. You live in the California desert. I live in the Nevada desert, and it is the worst place to have instruments.
Like,
they don't
necks
like it.
are like no. They're just like no.
Extremely temperamental. So now this is an interesting conversation because you and I are both.
We're in the same band.
Well, that too. Yeah. That's a whole other confusing ordeal. But
I love it.
No, we're both, immigrants that came to this country to take jobs out of the,
of the good American people's hands.
Exactly. Yeah. But,
I like your spin on that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I can honestly say there's probably a lot of just regular, white dudes that they could replace me with, but not many people like yourself. I think you're in a league all your own. So, what are you gonna do?
The lone leprechaun. It's like, well, oh my God, yeah, the immigration struggle. It's no joke. Joke.
Yeah, well, that's kind of half the story. Every time I get into an Uber, I detect an accent, whatever it is, and I immediately go, so how long you been in Vegas? And it always opens a very interesting conversation, because especially for me, it's like, okay, well, if you lived, they assume I'm just some American guy, I assume. And then I go, well, I'm from Canada. So they go, oh, okay. So then each of us sort of, present these parallel type stories.
Maple leaves.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of thing.
It's like me and Lucky Charms. They're like, would you like some Lucky Charms? I mean, we don't have Lucky Charms, but anyway, that's a whole other.
Yeah, whichever American stereotype you can make up about our particular heritages, sure, yeah, knock yourself out. No, I think that's the initial fascinating thing is, okay, well then how did Tanya end up here and
plugged in? Very good question.
Plugged into so many, amazing things. Well, first of all, it's your talent and your ability that plugs you into all these things. But the bigger question is, what is that process? Like, what, maybe we'll start at the beginning. So you grew up in is it a smaller village in Ireland somewhere? Or? Yeah,
a small town in Ireland called Mullingar, right in the middle.
How many people is that?
And now I'm going to say it's back up to around 15, maybe 10, 15,000. But it swayed so much in my teens because about 10 years ago, everyone immigrated, my generation, to Canada or Australia.
Right.
Everybody just left.
Right.
Like it was half the town emptied. So our population, but it's not a village. It was a village. Everything was in Ireland, but a small town, very musical town though. There was a lot of music around, kind of, I guess, where it got in the bones. But yeah, this is definitely a long way from home. And to be honest, some mornings I wake up, I'm like, what? Like, what has happened?
What
over
is the
past
turn of
10
events
years?
that brought me to the California desert?
I don't remember becoming a bass player. What is this in my hand?
Yeah, so how does that come about? Was your family musical? Were you?
No, so they say it's in the water in my hometown, but no one in my family plays an instrument. My dad loves music, so I definitely kind of got my love of music from my dad. He had a great vinyl collection, so that was subconsciously happening growing up. All the classics, Zeppelin and Floyd, and great like real country like Willie Nelson and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so that
outlaw
was
country. Yeah,
totally like the real stuff, not the manufactured stuff. But so that was kind of going on in the background. But honestly, like I didn't pick up a bass until I was 17, 18, because I just worked in animal rescue from 8 to 18. I worked in a rescue shelter. I was basically a vet's assistant for like 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a total turn of events. But I was always around music. So I was at all these venues, and all my friends were in bands. I started playing a little bit when I was about 17. And then I got really obsessed with bass really, really fast. And I just kind of joined a band immediately, like 6 days into playing. I was I'm in a band. My cousin needed a bass player, and it was a really heavy metal band. So I just kind of jumped in the deep end, and I was fucking terrible. It was hilarious. I've been playing for like 6 days, and they're like, "Do you want to join the band?" I'm like, "All right." They're like, "We're in drop C sharp." And, it's like, okay, I don't know what that means, but here you go.
Can you tune this for me? Yeah.
Like, just whatever. So I really jumped in the deep end with playing, and that's kind of always been my thing. From there on, I got really into it, and I was like in a lot of bands from the get-go.
Interesting. Are these bands like all in your town?
Quite a few of them at the beginning, but then what I started doing was doing like, corporate wedding gigs, those kind of function gigs, which I think is such a great way to cut your teeth, because obviously you have to learn a bunch of songs. And it's like the top 40, and it's for weddings and all these.
And you're also on stage a lot, so you kind of start playing through that stage fright kind of thing. It gets kind of nullified pretty quickly because you're playing so often. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's like, that's the thing. You just have to jump in. And I think if I had done it any other way, I probably would have kept it up, because I wasn't interested in like sitting in a room and being like the studio space there that just like plays along. I wanted to be gigging immediately. So the stage became my teacher from the get-go. And what I was doing was essentially putting myself in situations where I was the worst musician by a mile. So you're like, jump in with a bunch of pros and is the best way to learn. And like, you have to learn 40 songs, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I just gigged like a lunatic from the get-go. I was like, at one stage I was in 9 bands. It was hysterical. Wow. I was like, there's only seven days in a week. But anyway, I did that for a couple of years. That's kind of how I literally learned how to play. And then I started doing like session stuff, where it was a lot of the TV house band stuff. So we'd like the Saturday night, the Irish version of like, Saturday night TV shows, and the Eurovision, like all the Eurovision bands, a lot of pop gigs. So like, the pop bands would go out and the boy bands would do like solo tours with each singer. I ended up because Ireland's so small, once you are in that kind of loop, there's not that many session players. There's a lot of bands and a lot of people in bands. There's not that many people who are like, I'm a session player. I was just fucking saying it. I didn't even know what it meant at the time. I was like, I'm a session player.
So how old are you? Like, so what is the process between, like, how old are you when you start these gigs and all this, when you're deep ending it?
19, when you're deep ending.
How old? I'm sorry?
Is that a thing in Vegas?
I just made it up. That was deep ending.
Sorry.
It doesn't sound right. It doesn't. Let's not.
We'll be when you were low ending.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But you were how old? 16? Is that what you said?
No, 19. 18,
19.
19.
Okay, wow.
Yeah,
okay,
I didn't even touch a bass until I was just like turning 18.
That's super impressive.
There was no bass. It was hysterical. There was like nothing got to do. I never would have guessed the trajectory. I didn't even think about music because it was just animals. I mean, it still is. But
no, I know, yeah.
But I just became so obsessed with it. So yeah, by 19, I was touring around Ireland and doing that thing a lot. And then I started to get like the session gigs, like 20, 21, 22, like bigger stuff. And, I did a tour with Sharon Corr from the Corrs, and that was my first like international thing. And then after that, it was like, the Riverdance, the theater shows. I ended up in that world. And it was after that Maynard Keenan asked me to be on the Pussifer record. And that was my gate into the US.
How did Maynard find you? It's so...
Glasgow, and Tool were playing in Glasgow.
Oh, wow.
Some of his crew were my crew.
And it was mad. Like, I don't know, Sarah, like, obviously huge Tool, Perfect Circle fan growing up. That's my jam, like all that alt, like prog metal stuff.
Totally.
And I was just at their show. I had played the night before in Glasgow, and I went to see Tool in this small venue for them. I can't remember the name of it. And some of my backline crew from the gig were actually working that same gig. And at that time,
gone really into this random obsession with conical rhythms and Indian music, and I met them after, and I was talking to Danny Carey about that. I was like nerding out on like how to count 7 and Indian conical, and I was, everyone else is like fanning on them, and I'm just like, dude, like, how do you structure 11 when you're doing conical?
Wow.
Yeah, it was really random. So anyway, I think because of just that natural, just music chats, and then I was chatting to Maynard, and at that time especially, I think I was like 22.
Crazy. And you'd only been playing like 3 years or 4 years.
Yeah, I've been 4.5 weeks.
Sorry, I have like a sound change happening here. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
I think my headphones died. But yeah, so anyway, I was in that really early obsessive phase about music as well. So I was in that, I was in original bands, and I was really creative mode, and Maynard just picked up on that. And then he was talking to me about how Pussifer is this like revolving door. For anyone that doesn't know Pussifer, his other band, he's actually had it a long time. It is a revolving door of guests. So everyone's on it, and that's kind of the whole point of it. It's like a lot of guest players.
Yeah.
So he just said to me, like, do you want to play on some Pussifer tracks? Yeah, I'm trying to be all cool, like, yeah, sure, I'll check my calendar, Maynard Keenan.
Talk to my agent, talk to my manager.
I started playing 4 minutes ago. I will check. It was very funny, but it was cool. And I thought, yeah, I mean, they gave me their cards and whatever. And then they went off on tour in Europe, and I went home to Ireland like fucking deer in headlights. Like, oh my God, I got out to play. The one thing I've always done is especially then, was like say yes to everything. It's like every opportunity, go.
Yeah.
I arrive home and tell my parents in the middle of the night, I'm going to America to record with who? What? But
so you're still living in the small town. You didn't move to Dublin or like.
No, I was still at that stage. I was still in my hometown, working in bands all over Ireland, but still living in Mullingar. And and that was that invite. And then obviously I followed up, as you should always follow up.
Of course, yeah.
And it was a couple months past, and then I thought, this will never happen. That can't be real. And then I get this email out of the blue. It's like, hey, Tanya, we're going to be recording between, whatever it was, July 9th and 12th. Do you want to come out to Arizona? I was like, I booked a flight immediately. I literally, before I even answered the email, I booked the flight.
Wow.
Okay. I remember only having a little bit of money from local gigs, and I had exactly enough for a flight. And I was, because obviously at that stage, I obviously was not seasoned and completely green, and should have been on the management going, here's the flight I would like. I was like, book a flight.
Amazing. So you paid for your own flight to go and work on someone else's?
I mean, that was my own bad. I'm sure I had to reply to the email first, but when you're really green, it's like, I guess I just go out and, buy everything.
Show up and but that's your attitude is correct. You're absolutely when the opportunity arises, you just go, don't
jump at that stuff.
I'm deep ending it. See, I'm just going to deep end this.
This is our new word.
We just coined it. It's never going to catch on, but I'll have forgotten it 10 seconds.
Or in Vegas. It will be
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exciting. So this is you don't need a visa or any of that crap. You're just I'm getting on a plane. I'm going over there and going to figure it out.
You're just a visitor.
Yeah.
And that was session being so loose. It wasn't so that was my first real serious studio session. So I remember being a bit freaked out because I had written a lot with my original bands. I wrote a lot of the music for us, but I remember emailing back and forth with Maynard and being like, what should I practice? What should I what the fuck are we doing when I get out there? And they're like, we'll just jam. I'm like, okay, see you there. So it was great though, because I went out and it was myself and Josh Eustace from Telephone Tel Aviv. Do you know Josh?
I don't know him, but I know who he is. Yeah. Yeah, monster.
Nails and a bunch of stuff. So it was me and him writing with Maynard. But Maynard was also in wine picking season, so we were writing all day, and then Maynard was out crushing grapes.
Yeah, what's his wine company called again?
He has Merkin Vineyards, and I always pronounce it wrong. I think he says a caduceus.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing wine. That's
I've never enjoyed. I've always wanted to go out there and sort it out. What town is the actual vineyard in? It's in like.
Well, they're all over. He has a bunch, but
Oh, he has a bunch.
Where the shop and everything is. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's like a tasting place.
It's really cool. It's really, really cool. But that is so trippy. It's like, oh, okay, he's gonna be out picking grapes, and then we'll see him in the evening to write vocals.
That sounds like the most extreme thing about about Rockstar. He's got a vineyard, but he picks his own wine. Okay,
yeah, no, he's really good at it. He's really.
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah.
Of the world's greatest multitasker, but so that was a hell of an experience because it was also my first time in America.
Oh yeah. So your first experience was, I guess, a desert experience, or yeah, I guess kind of, yeah.
There's something about that desert calling me back every time.
Yeah, so it's not like you got to like New York City and it's the buildings and the cabs and or even Los Angeles with the palm trees. It was like, no, you're
like straight to Arizona and like just ran straight to like a tiny town in Arizona. It was funny. It was such a great experience because it was funny though, gear wise, looking back, I had no clue. Like I've never been a big gearhead. I still am. But, you pick up something you like it, you play it. I'm more about that tone,
sure.
As Roger Sadowski says, you fiddle around it until you like how it sounds. I'm like,
exactly.
Whatever that is. But I brought out because the only bass I had at the time, do you remember the music band Sub?
Of course, yeah.
They were great.
Yeah.
But when I think that I did fucking record on this, like €250 Sub bass. Well, we went down to a music shop in like Phoenix or somewhere, and we just bought a bunch of pedals, and because he was setting up the studio for Josh, and it was, well, which ones do you want? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, oh, let's just get them all and bring them up. So I just turned them all on at the same time, creatively because it was very free. So I ended up co-writing a couple songs and being
so cool, which
is like, when I look back, like ridiculous.
It's such an extreme opportunity to just kind of explode like that. So what happens next after that? Like, is it back to Ireland and back to the wedding bands and
tail between my legs, just kind of like, well, that was awesome. Is that it? Because when you get to play with someone that you respect so much musically like that, and it was just such a otherworldly experience as a young musician. I went back and I was immediately busy. I was always busy and and it was an interesting thing because I was making a living off music early.
Yeah.
And that, as we all know, it's still hard to do even when you're super deep in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I was, had my own place and I was able to have pay rent young and do all this stuff off music. I remember thinking, I can seem to work in Ireland and get these like TV house band gigs, do the wedding stuff, but it's so small that you start to go around the same circle and then again and again, and it's like the same bands. You're like, well, it's not really going to go anywhere else.
Right.
So I was like, right, I think it's time to just take a leap of faith. And then I don't know, it was probably a year after the Maynard experience, 9 months or a year. I was like, I'm gonna start going to LA. I was like, I figured LA would be a hodgepodge of people who are trying to do the same thing. So that was on a total wing and a prayer. I just woke up one morning. I was like, I'm going to go to LA.
Yeah, well, actors, musicians, people who want to be in the industry of any sort, all sort of Los Angeles is the destination, the focus. Yeah. So
I don't really know why, but you're just like, LA. The TV seems to tell me LA.
Yeah, well, and now that you've been through it, it's, well, the record companies are there. There's, tons of auditions. There's always things going on there. And it does make sense. It doesn't mean you can't do it Chicago or wherever the hell else you decide to land. But so now is that visas? Is that like a whole process? Is the immigration talk?
Still happening, like such a pain.
It's always happening. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And it's funny because people don't have any clue about this. But yeah.
No, I know.
So I came out first. The first time I came out, because I didn't know anyone in LA, zero. So I came out and I found out that the ASCAP, because I figured you have a point of focus, right? So the ASCAP convention's happening in Hollywood and Highland, bang in the middle. Go out, put your bass in your back, go around and fucking try and meet people.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the ESTA visitors visa because I wasn't working. It was just coming out to, network. That word we all love so much.
Yes, of course, yeah. Kissing babies.
The first time that I heard this reference, like, good networking, I'm like, isn't that just talking to people?
Yeah, exactly. Socializing, really. It's just
and it's weird. So anyway, it goes to the ASCAP convention and I kind of told Darren, like, I didn't like Hollywood immediately. I was like, I don't like this, I don't like the vibe. It was very weird. But I immediately met some musicians, obviously started talking to them, and I'm like dressed for stage, like ready, like there's a gig any minute now. And there's, people coming up talking, you're chit-chatting. And I went to that. And then off the back of that convention, I was invited to, a couple of people's gigs. So everyone invited me to their gig. I went to every gig, just show up at everyone's gig. And then
Sure, yeah.
I'm thinking about trying to come out here and get a visa. And so I did that a couple of times. Like I went back and forth and then I went to NAMM the following January because I heard this NAMM thing,
Yeah.
And at NAMM, I got my first LA gig with Angelo Batio.
No way.
Kind of four-necked.
Yeah, people who don't know, it's like,
wonders what we're doing.
It's insane. It's insane. It's an insane thing to witness. He's a lovely guy, though, from what I know. Yeah.
And that was really random because it was like, I had no clue who he was. Because also bear in mind the music scene and even like the songs that people play at jam nights at Top 40 is very different to at home in Europe.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I had no clue who Angelo Batio was. I was just like, okay, gig. So we're playing like after NAMM parties and then you just start to meet more people. And I still didn't actually like LA or Hollywood. But I could see immediately that like if you really want to, go into the scene, it's a good spot. So after I think the third visit, I applied for a visa. And I applied for a visa, the Riverdance called me and were like, hey, we're going on an international tour starting in Dublin. I was like, oh, I'm moving to America, thanks. And they were like, well, it's a year and it's global and it's a big deal. It's Europe, China, North America, South America. And I remember about it and being like, you know what? It's probably a good thing to do a world tour and get that experience. So I put the LA thing on pause and I went on tour all over the world with the Riverdance for a year and a half.
I think anybody would do that. I think anybody...
It's like no idea what to expect. I don't know if you've done much theater, but it's, it's like 8-9 shows a week. It's just insanity. It's a whole other world because you're doing matinees, you're doing double days.
Yeah. Day
off is your travel day. It was really intense, but in hindsight, it was good to do it young and with less experience because every tour since then is such a piece of cake. Like it's insane. It was so hard. It was so hard. Musically, it was so hard travel-wise that everything else is like...
Then you get in a regular tour and it's like, so we're only playing like 4 times this week? We could do that, yeah. Yeah, that seems fine.
No, you're like, easy. I'm such a road dog. It's hilarious.
That's to be appreciated, though. So, like, okay, so then you come back to Los Angeles after touring the world. Like, we're literally saying, like, what, Asia, South America? Like, was it the world?
We started in Dublin and we did, like, an Irish opening. And, like, Ireland, Europe. And then we did China next, which was insane. The whole Asian tour was just crazy because it's so popular over there. Like you do not expect, oh my God, you're getting off the flights and you'd swear Aerosmith were walking off the plane. So strange. They have every band member's 10-piece band and like 30 dancers.
Wow.
Everything to be signed. Like, wow, it's really popular over here. So it's just a strange thing.
So cool.
Playing Olympic stadiums.
Wow.
So it's really trippy.
Huh.
Who knew?
Who knew? I know now. That's really interesting.
Dancing Irish people were so popular it is. But anyway, it was a great experience. And then after that, we did Canada. They did a lot of residencies in Canada, actually. We were in Toronto for a long time. We did like 6-week residencies at the Ed Mirvish Theatre.
That sounds familiar. So that's got to be nice when you're just actually like doing 6 weeks in one city. So you get to kind of like...
Well, unluckily for us, we were in the dead of winter. So it's like,
yeah, well, yeah.
Detroit, New York, and Chicago, and Toronto in winter.
Yeah.
So, no, let's go out and see something.
Yeah, not likely. Especially for like, that's got to be jarring from where I know it's not palatial sun or whatever in Ireland, but still, you don't get winters like that.
No, and then it's like we didn't have any time off anyway. When you're doing 9 shows a week, you don't have any time off. Like you're eating your dinner in between shows. That's about it. Then you're going to bed and getting up the next day and doing the same. But it was a wonderful experience. It was intense though, but it was something that like really set me up for life on the road. Like
I bet.
Anything, because then by the time I came over to the US and I started getting back over and like moved and went through the whole visa process, which I'm still like dealing with. It's chaos.
Yeah, it is.
It's just madness. But yeah, it's like, okay, that tour was so intense. And that was pretty much 18 months straight. So I remember I arrived back in Dublin, my sister collected me. I just was a shell of my former self. She's like, oh God, like, just put her down.
You had the bad case of road burn.
Oh my God, it's so rough. I slept for like 3 straight days. Like,
I bet, yeah. So how quickly, when you return to America, do things start to kind of give me the time frame? What year is this when you return, sort of after the world tour, Riverdance tour? What year are we talking about?
I think it's what year? I'm like, what year are we in now?
Yeah. Well, everybody's asking that question these days, with the last couple of years being a blur.
It's like 2019 in my brain.
Yeah.
7 years ago that I finished.
7 years ago, okay.
Years ago, I finished the Riverdance tour because I had a timeline memory actually pop up on that recently. I was like, okay, so that was seven and maybe 8. It was 7 years ago, yeah. So
how quickly do you, when you come back to America, does it start connecting into the other, or is the Ronnie Wood thing, is that still a UK thing, that connection, or where does this all?
Studio thing in Dublin through Kevin Godley from 10cc. He did this app that was really it was like this great idea for an app I actually don't think ended up taking off. What was it called? My Band or something band, where they hired professional players and they bring in a bass player, drummer, guitar player to play on, like we did one with Joss Stone, there was Ronnie Wood, there was someone else, and it was like this, it was a great concept. I actually don't think it ever ended up taking off. And I did one with David Gray, and it was really cool because that was just like in studio in Dublin. Oh, I did one with Taylor Hawkins, and he was in studio in LA.
Oh, wow.
And I was there, and it was very loose. It was like, so with Taylor's one, it was really interesting because he started, so the drums were first, and then it was like, what would you put on top of this? We're like, okay, so, chords. Like, so I just went wherever. So that was fun. But that was a studio thing. So that wasn't live. But right, so after, I don't know, I think I was home for a couple of weeks after the Riverdance thing, slept for a few days, and then I applied for a visa, came over. And I'm going to say the first few months for sure, very little other than me, like networking, being out and about. But I brought my Irish band over.
Oh, okay.
And I did loads, because at the time I was in this really cool 3-piece band and we were doing pretty well in Ireland. So we're like, well, let's give it a go over here. We did the kind of quintessential Sunset Strip stuff. But,
sure.
You know, the drummer's girlfriend wanted him to come back to Ireland, and there was like this whole thing happening again that happens with original bands, and it just didn't work out. But I, at that point, had kind of decided I'm going to be just full-time, like hired gun session player, because I'm sick of this, like trying to carry bands. But another band I was working with in Dublin, really cool band, Preacher's Son, wanted to do a record out in LA with Warren Hort. Do you know Warren?
I know that name. Why do I know him?
He's a pro. He has that really cool YouTube channel now. But Warren's a producer, an English guy who's Laurel Canyon. At the time, he had Swing House.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He was doing a record with an Irish band over here, and he was the first producer I worked with out here. So that was really cool. So a lot of people kind of lined up nicely, and then I was like, okay, so it has to be LA. The first gig that I got that was like a consistent tour was a pop gig, like a pop R&B gig through like Disney, Jordan Fisher. I did that for a year and a half or so. It was really fun. I love that world. It was really cool. I did that, and then pretty much I was still in that band when Dee Snider hired me.
Oh, so really?
I was actually looking at videos the other day. I was laughing on my phone because just don't know how it worked out, but it somehow managed to, for about 2 months, their gigs just almost clashed. But I'm like, I remember playing Hellfest with Dee, or not Hellfest, Riot Fest in Chicago.
Okay.
Off stage, we headlined or fairly late anyway. I was off stage, whatever, it's like 10. I ran straight to the airport to get a red eye to London to jump on stage with Jordan Fisher the next day in London.
Wow.
It was like, I can't believe I made it. If there's one delay, I'm screwed.
That stuff is so stressful. I know.
You know, like when you're not just in one thing and you're just cusping like this chaos. But that went on for about 2 months, and then Jordan kind of came off the road, and he was writing. He went in to do theater and Broadway and stuff, and then Dee was only supposed to do a few shows, and then I ended up on the road with him for 2 years and on the record. So
wow. So with the Disney thing, is that like full audition? You got to be there, or how does that come about? Like,
you know, I'm sure you've done those LA auditions back in the day, and it's like when I first came out, I did a few, and I was like, oh, this is weird. It's like a cattle call. You know?
Oh yeah, they're painful. Yeah.
So weird. Jordan kind of was, but honestly, like I got this email from, it's like Red Light Management and Disney or whatever, and it was like a conglomerate of everyone that works with them. And they're like, there's auditions happening. But really when we got there, they had kind of deciphered most of the band, and they were looking for, I think it was guitar and bass. And they kind of had already built keys, drums or whatever. So it was pretty loose on that one. I think they had already decided. But it was funny because I remember going into that one and being like, there is no bass on the tracks that you sent me because it's just kind of like sub sidechain in the mix because it's very confused. So I'm kind of going to obviously do bass or what I would think. And I remember the management being like, oh my God, she noticed. I'm like, well, there's no bass.
Yeah. The
like,
first thing I noticed was there's nothing for me to play. Yeah.
I'm not sure which part. But I remember that being really funny and that kind of being like a bonding moment because Jordan was standing there going, oh, yeah, she has a point. There's no bass.
That's great, though. And then with Dee, what's Dee's connection? Like, how did Dee find you within that pop world?
That's what Dee always, he still jokes to this day. He says that he stole me from Lord of the Dance.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. That show, but anyway. No,
indirectly.
Because of jam nights, which are so important when you're cutting your teeth in a new town. So who was it? Was it Mark Schulman and someone else saw me play and I played with people at a jam night that played with Dee. And then there was this like, there's a one-off gig with Dee and you want to come in and do it. And I was like, yeah, sure, one-off gig, cool. And then one-off gig turned into 2 years.
Now, is that another thing that you wouldn't have been familiar enough with? I mean, maybe like, we're not going to take it or...
Literally told Dee the first time I met him, I don't know who you are.
I bet you found that charming, actually. I bet you.
Like, I didn't, like, obviously you've heard we're not going to take it. It's almost impossible.
Right. Sporting events or something like that, yeah.
That kind of whole hair metal, that genre, it just wasn't on. Like, yes, it was there. Like, my dad was aware of some of that bands, like probably heard them at some stage, but it wasn't really prominent. It's not on the radio, so it's not in your culture growing up. So that was really funny. And even when we did the Kiss cruise last year with Adler, I was literally telling Paul Stanley and he's laughing at me. I'm like, I don't know any Kiss songs.
I love that. We have a boat. That's how big we are. Yeah.
It's been around a while, right? But again, obviously you've heard the classics, but I just didn't grow up in that. Like,
sure, yeah.
Like, it was more into the 90s stuff as well, of like the Chili Peppers really popular, like Soundgarden, the Tool, all that stuff.
Sure.
The 80s rock metal thing wasn't as big.
Well, it's also, I mean, generational too. I mean, you're not really of that age group. So it's by the time you were getting into music, it was probably already past, I assume.
Yeah, it was kind of specific to what your friends are listening to.
Of course, yeah.
But I like it as well because it's very funny. Like, I come out and I play songs at jam nights that I'm like, oh my God, this song is so amazing. When was it written? And everyone else in the band would be like, oh my God, we've played this 5,000 times.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I played Even Sweet Emotion. I was like, what's this? And they're like, oh my God.
Yeah, I know. It's been around since 1976 or something.
Sure. I was saying this to Nuno the other day. To play with Nuno Bettencourt.
Yeah.
Nuno's a good friend, he's awesome. But I was telling him that during the pandemic, I discovered 3 sides to every story, the album they wrote 20-something years ago.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh my God, I've only discovered it now. And he's like, thank you for the rebirth. I'm like, this is so good. But like, the thing is, my whole life has always been activism, animals, environmentalism. So I ended up in music, but I was still always working in this world. So I wasn't in as obsessively in the music side. It was more like the performing, and, you know, obviously when I had to learn stuff, I'm learning stuff, but I've always been active in this world, this other world that I'm very passionate about. So it's like, it's kind of, I like it, but I'm a little bit green with some of the music.
But it's fascinating to me because your ability as a player, which doesn't surprise me because you don't strike me as a, you know, metal, hard rock kind of player. You have like a sort of a deeper, I know there's R&B chops going on. There's a lot more. You can hang in all these different places and be right at home. Where guys like me, it's kind of like, well, I do this specific thing, but I put me in the pop group, and I'd be like, well, I would just be like this lumbering giant that makes racket in the corner. but that's really interesting to me because you know, to say that you're so obsessed. We're going to get into the activism thing too, because of course that's so. In a lot of ways, it's almost 50% of you, probably more than 50% of you, is that world, and this bass playing stuff is kind of like, and the music side is.
I told you the other day, I was like, we need you so that I can focus on this. So you can take the gig.
I know. Yeah, for those that don't know or I haven't understood, I've been filling in. I've been covering her. I've been wearing her her 7-inch heels on stage to fill in with Steven Adler and the guys while she's doing all this stuff. Let's get into that now. Why not? I mean, well, within reason, I think it's interesting that you establish yourself so quickly. I think obviously you're first of all, I think the lesson to be learned for anybody who's paying attention is to just be awesome and just be able to separate yourself from everybody else, because within that world, I think when and I've said this before to a lot of my friends, when it comes to the cattle calls and all that kind of stuff, when you there's a lot of times some musician will come through and you'll go, well, that person's amazing. They're not right for this gig, but they get kind of like, someone holds on to that. And playing those jam sessions and those things are essentially auditions in a way, because people are seeing, they're looking at all these different musicians and they go, and I think your ability and your look and everything about you separates you so quickly and makes you a star, kid. You're a star, I think you're going to make it, kid. But it really takes it away from the just sort of like, oh, here's another, guy with clearly he has expenses for black hair dye, so we should hire him. I should say it's an ability to separate who you are from that. And first of all, you have to be able to hang. You have to be able to be a good musician.
Yes.
And even more important sometimes is be a good hang, like be able to like.
I'm just going to say that, like, when I look back at all the gigs that I'm sure you're the same, there's a lot to be said for just being, as we say in Ireland, just being sound, just being a nice person, being yourself, being able to hang. There's no, and I don't know, like, if I always felt like if you're just yourself, and you're not trying, because you meet a lot of people and who are lovely, but they're trying to be all egotistical and like put on some rock star thing or whatever. Like, just be yourself. I know it sounds so,
You can just call it Hollywood. I know what you're talking about.
At the end of the day, I think across the board, music and everything else, the world is starved for authenticity. So it's like, if you're just a person, an authentic person, whether you're a dick or the nicest person ever, just literally don't be trying to be this, that, and the other. And I think when I look back, most of the gigs I got were actually based on the foundation of like getting on with the players. Like, that was there. We had a laugh. Obviously, we all know each other can play, but it's like secondary. It's like the hang is so essential. And, people get sick of saying that. It's all about the hang. But it is. Yeah. Because if you're going to be on the road extensively with a bunch of people that essentially you have to become your family, it's a lot of personalities, a lot of drama, a lot of, just life on the road. You have to be malleable and you have to just be able to roll with these situations that come. If you're a pain in the ass and you have a giant ego, it's like, who's going to want to bring you on tour?
I've said that so many times on here, and you can't say it enough, is the fact that there are people who are really talented, but if they're a nightmare, the guy who's slightly less talented but a good hang, that guy's the guy. He'll go far in this business just because he's a good hang.
Oh, 100%. So true. And it's kind of, it's funny. And you see people put on this act. They're actually really nice people, but they think they have to be a certain way. I don't think bass players ever do it. I think it's only guitarists.
Interesting.
Modest, like being in the background. We're okay with being in the background.
Just, doing our thing. But I think it is also one of those things too of like not just being it's not just a case of being, a dick. It's also, is that person reliable? Are they going to like, show up for bus call? Are they going to show up for rehearsal? All that stuff. Drugs, alcohol, personal problems with their relationships, whatever it is, these things can you have to be able to hang. And that means not just being a good guy. Because I know we've done a lot of good guys who I don't know where he is, or whatever it is. It's like
for the 10th time. But that's so true. And it's like I'm obsessively organized anyway. I tour managed all of my own bands in Ireland. So I come from that mindset anyway. So even though I'm not, I've been a hired gun for so many years, I can't help like check all the date sheets and make sure everybody knows their times. It's professional, right?
But do you think that has something to do with how disciplined you are in your life? I mean, like with your health and with your
it wasn't always.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, it's just in knowing you, it's like I just assume you've always been this superhero who can just kind of like show up and do all this. But but don't spoil the image for me. Whatever you do, I
will stay in superhero.
Did you? So that the interesting thing is you brought up the other day when we were talking about to do with your current activism and whatnot. The very thought that people studying you because you've always been plant-based, that whole thing. I was studying you is probably the wrong word, but I just think the fascination with you having been this person, it's not some like, you're not like the person that came along and like, this is the new thing to try, you know, or to do, or it's like, it's no.
For anyone who has followed me a little bit longer, there's, you know, a certain percentage of your audience that are obviously music and bass players. And then I got a lot of feedback over the years where people are like, oh, you moved to LA and you became vegan, da, da, da. Just to preface, like, I've actually been a vegan my whole life, but I didn't have a word for it. So I wasn't a vegan until I met a vegan when I was in my late teens, which was hysterical.
Yeah, didn't we all just call it vegetarian? I mean, when
yeah, I was just like a little veggie, and I I didn't like dairy anyway, so I was naturally vegan. But yeah, it's mad. So that's always been like who, like, I was an animal rights activist from this for as soon as I could walk. I was literally animal rights. I was saving animals. That was my whole jam. Worked in a rescue shelter. Started volunteering at age 8.
Wow.
There 18, was training like in veterinarian clinic, and everyone thought I'd do that, and then I picked up a bass. But it's interesting now, so many years in the music industry, because my platform as a musician has served such a great purpose to, because I don't want to be famous, I want to be successful, but I don't want to, it's not about fame, but it's like, hey, look, if you can have a platform and you can use it for, you know, environmental rights, human rights, animal rights, just like using your platform, right?
Of course,
really the pandemic for me gave me that time off the road to go, these are the projects that are like my dream projects. Let me like really focus on them, because, you know, I toured for 10 straight years. All those tours we just talked about, there was no gap longer than a few weeks.
Wow, that's impressive.
Just like bam, 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 bam. I was on the road for 10 years.
Wow. Wow. I wouldn't guess that. You should look way rougher. it's that humidifier's doing wonders, whatever's happening.
I'm actually just steamy looking. But it speaks a lot to like staying healthy right on the road. And I'm so not rock and roll. Like, do you want to do wheatgrass and do yoga? Like, yeah, I can. I mean, I can party. I'm Irish. I like my whiskey. But
sure, yeah.
Something I realized along the way, I don't like feeling like shit on stage. I don't like feeling like shit when I travel. I can go and have a drink with the band if I want. I can give or take. But that's like one thing I loved about touring with Dee. Dee has, you know, everyone thinks this image of Twisted Sister. Dee's never drank, never smoked, never smoked, nothing. We would literally be stretching and having.
And he's in incredible shape. I mean, I don't know how old he is, but he still looks amazing. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but yeah, the health thing. I really got into that, especially in the last 5 years or so, and just, you know, yourself for your mental health, being a touring musician, like finding something grounding. Like I was very aware of how stressful life on the road was becoming, mentally and physically. And you're like, okay, and you live this crazy life of you never really have a home base. You're in and you're out. It's exciting, obviously, and we still love it, but it can be very disorientating mentally. So I started to get into things like yoga. And something I could just do on a regular basis, and having control of like what I eat and making sure I notice, like if you eat shit, you feel like shit. You're trying to perform that night and you're like, ugh, you're sluggish. And you know, and then you don't want to wake up to go to a 5 a.m. lobby call feeling crap. So it's kind of like the road teaches you a lot. And then I got, you know, I had this dream project in my head that was actually originally going to be a documentary. And then like Derek from Sepultura were in Dublin at the same time. We were talking about our ideas.
Wait, so now where does your connection to Derek come from? Because this is really fascinating to me, because Derek from Sepultura, from South America, and they just happen to be in Ireland or
Derek's the only American one in the band. So
right, yeah, he's American, 20
years. So Derek and I just know each other for years through the music. Because when I was out with Dee, especially, we toured a lot on the same circuits in the Europe festivals. And Derek is a lifelong veggie.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, he was in Dublin, Sepultura were playing in Dublin. I was on a layover from some show with Dee in Europe. And we're having lunch in Dublin with another friend of mine who's a big activist in the documentary world. He did Cowspiracy, What the Health, all those documentaries. Mm-hmm. So I said to him, you should interview my friend Derek, because he's this cool guy. He's like big, giant, strong dude, vegan basically his whole life. You guys should talk. So I put him to Kip's documentary. And then we're sitting having lunch. And he's telling me about this idea he has. And I'm like looking at my pitch deck. And they're basically the same.
Oh, wow.
Like, let's join forces.
Of course.
Way cooler. And we're so different. That'll be hilarious. So, and my best friends in Dublin are a production company. So, long story short, of lots of like storyboarding, manifesting, I went nuts, and I went to every plant-based convention there was, and I decided to just raise the capital to go and shoot, like pitch it and be like, I have this idea, it's so great. These two rock stars, whatever you want to label it as, both lifelong vegans, very different. Let's do this. And I actually just raised the money for season 1. So we flew all over the world, and we shot on the kids cruise. We shot in Brazil. We shot LA, Cleveland, Ireland. Where am I missing? I can't remember now. But we did that literally like March 13th, I think. We finished filming what we needed for season 1. And then the pandemic happened. It was like, but we edited all through the first year because we had so much content. So I'm sure that's been the process. It's been like, now, you know, you need to go bring it to market. So that's where we're at with it now. But we basically have the best way to describe it. I was a huge Bourdain fan.
Yeah.
And people always laugh at that because obviously he was like basically eating animals whole.
I know it's kind of like the anti-Tanya in a way.
But what I love is
yeah, no, his storytelling ability and the travel aspect of it really was brilliant.
Show it's like breaking down stereotypes, open people's minds to not be afraid of other people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, like the food is like this tiny part of it. So our model is very similar in that way. It's like we touched a lot of things. Oh, we shot with Sea Shepherd out in Mexico as well. So it's like everything kind of based on sustainability. It's not just food. So we did an episode that's like ocean conservation with Sea Shepherd, out on the boats with them.
Great.
And pirates and protecting like endangered species. And then we're down in Brazil, and the food is amazing down there. Just like, because Brazil is so well known for meat, but the food now is so people are really embracing like this whole let's eat more veg, it's better for the environment. But we talk to Ford Motors down there, and we cover the automotive industry going electric and talk about like the realities of that. Is it really as good as it sounds? Like really asking questions. And then you did our home stories. We had to go to Cleveland and Ireland to show where we came from. But that has been amazing and just like insane. It's like a dream project. It's like plant-based Bourdain with my friends. So that's at market now. It's like we're always, the music industry suddenly seems easy until you're in the fucking entertainment and documentary world. So as that's being packaged and sent out, I got a call a couple of weeks ago just to start this new documentary that I was supposed to just help connect people, because I'm very connected in like the plant-based world, and I know who's like a real grafter and who would be good for projects. And it was involved some Harvard scientists on epigenetics and the role, like our cellular, like our epigenetic age. So you obviously have your chronological age, and then you have like how healthy really are you on a cellular level.
Right.
So I thought I was just literally going to help them with the creative vision, because it's like a bunch of scientific nerds. So I went on all these calls and I was like, okay, you should do it like this, and I'll help you storyboard it out, and and these are the people you should go to for funding. And then I got a call back saying, actually, we want you to be the story. I'm like, oh shit, I'm a bass player, I should just be in the background. So they're actually going to be running.
I told you, that's what happens when you're a superhero.
Busy day. Neological center. So it's going to be a trip, because it's actually, so it's based on longevity. So I'll be your kind of host throughout the documentary, but we're going to do a lot of talking about the studies, plant-based health and plant-based food, the effect on everything from like fertility right through life to the end, and centenarians and death. So it's really fucking exciting, but it's also just an insane amount of work. And
of course.
Help. And then I started doing this studio session in LA as well, that started taking up so much time that I literally can't gig right now. Like, Todd!
Yeah, I know. Yeah, what? The bat signal went up and I put on my... See, superhero talk. Yeah. No, it's... I mean, it's a good example of just, you know, that classic, like, you know, the old cliches of find something you love and you'll never work a day in your life, you know, and all those things. But it is true. Watching you manifest these things, like, I mean, there is something to be said about your natural ability and your natural talent to have been able to kind of like not stumble into music, but just being musical and being able to turn that into, because you need that kind of sense of ambition and that sense of adventure that I'm going to get on a plane and go across the pond and figure it out, you know, and you have figured it out. And then on top of that, building it into, because when I saw you on the Kiss cruise, I remember seeing Derek and going, that's not Derek from Sepultura. I just kind of like, he was so unassuming, and he's hard to be unassuming because he's like my height. He's a huge man. And I was like, but no, he's Sepultura's not on this cruise. I never put
kids cruise.
Yeah. I did not put it together until later on. I go, oh, I felt like such a nerd after, like, I would have said hello. I love those guys. That's me. But no, it's a very interesting thing because, like you say, having lived this lifestyle your whole life, for it to suddenly become, a real focal point of and a real defining factor of who you are as a person in a way, because I suppose it is, no matter how you want to look at it, that is a very big stamp to put on a person that I take this very, it doesn't seem unusual to you and me, but it is unusual in terms of just the average person, that this is the life you've led your whole time. You're in incredible shape. You're gonna bury us all. So it's kind of like, now you turn it into this side of things, and being too busy to, I don't know, play Poughkeepsie or wherever the hell, is kind of like, oh, it's a good problem to have. I mean, nothing wrong with Poughkeepsie. I'd love to play there today. I'd play there, but it's really cool that you get to like I say, manifest these things into reality.
It's a lot got to do as well. Like I feel lucky that I'm still doing my passion. So it's tough to be like, well, if I go and do these gigs, I can't, like, because we have long calls, editing, like lots of just research and development going on right now, a lot of travel for that. I also have another business that you haven't even touched on called Plant Potential, which is
right.
And I do speaking in that world. This all kind of came about and it's all connected to the same thing. But for me, as an activist at the core, I had to make a decision this year when the world started back open. If I go back, because there's a couple of other tours as well, there's Adler stuff and there's other stuff coming in Europe and whatnot. It was like, I'll never finish these. I'm almost like, I have them so close to package. Let me really focus. But it is actually my main passion. So it's not, I've seen a lot of friends struggle through the pandemic because music is everything. And that's beautiful. But I feel lucky that I have this. This is still my passion. So like, fight every day to wake up and work on this. And if I get to gig as well, sometimes great. But it's a lot as well about finding, like, just sounds corny, like, I know my purpose. I've known my purpose since I was 4 years of age, and I made not eat animals. It has never changed. So I just happened to take this wild ride and become a bass player. It's all connected in documentaries and shows and whatnot. But my purpose has always been laser focused on the activism side of it, and just like, while we're here, trying to learn as much as you can and really know it, not just be some, like, it's not a fad. It's not like I moved to LA, became a vegan, and now I'm like, save the trees. It's like, this shit runs deep.
Of course,
like seeing what's going over the past like 5 years, especially, it's really beautiful being involved with people that are deep in that world of shifting systems, like entire food systems are being shifted. It's just like really exciting to me. So, but that is my passion. So it's not like, well, gigs aren't as aplenty, I'm going to go do this. It's like, no, I was doing this all along. Now I just kicked it into fifth gear.
Of course. And I think that's kind of inspiring that you actually have the ability that a window gets closed and you kick open a door kind of thing and find a way to do it. Yeah. Boom. But it's kind of one of those things too. It's like, when you say it runs deep, trust me, I remember going through the prairies, the Midwest of Canada, and like, being a vegetarian was like, okay, I guess I'll have the fries. It was a very challenging salad and fries and seeing it change so much in the past. Well, it's been ongoing, that I can go to, if I decide to be, as Sebastian Bach said to me, hey, I had one of those Impossible Burgers over at Burger King. And I go, this is his way of connecting with me. I go, that's awesome, Sebastian. It's like, good for you. It's like, but that is a fascinating thing that, you could go to Burger. I don't generally go there, but you can go there. And
that's such a profound thing to like. I don't like when we go. I never go to fast food chains generally, but when we drive by all these places, especially on tour in the Midwest, especially in the US in general, there's so many malls. Now I look with this like big teary eyes because I know the people who started those companies. I know the guys. I know them. Like, wow, they grew this idea that they were trying to, basically for them, and these guys come from actually like cattle farming and stuff. They were doing it because it's like less. They're like, this is not sustainable. We want to use less land, less water, less feed, obviously hormone free. So they've created a product over years and years, and now it's in fast food chains. So that's not to say it's healthy to eat all the time. Don't be going to fast food chains. But it just shows such a big shift is happening. And
it does.
It happened faster, but it's really beautiful to see. I'm like, oh my God, this is Impossible Burger.
I know, it's crazy. It's funny because I just met Chef Tal this weekend. Yeah, your friend Chef Tal, Ronan, who is a world-renowned Crossroads restaurant and an amazing dude. He got up and played My Michelle and and Sweet Child of Mine. I go, why'd you pick the wackiest songs to play with all the moving around? There's some pretty kind of banger.
It was funny because he texted me. He's like, "Oh, I'm coming down tonight. Do you want some food from the restaurant?" I was like, "I won't be there, but bring Todd some."
I appreciate that because we made it a lovely connection. I'm like, dude, I'm like a veggie from way back, so I'm your guy. So, yeah. So I was like, did Tanya set this up on purpose? I mean, this is perfect. Yeah. But no, it's and he's involved. Is it Beyond or Impossible? Which one's he involved with?
He had Kite Hill as well, and Gardein. Tal has his fingers in so many things. He's such a dark horse, so quiet about stuff. And then you're like, wait, you're part of that company as well. And obviously Crossroads and whatnot. But he's just like an insane chef.
He is, yeah.
I'm always like, I'm not a fan of the word vegan. Not that I'm like, I think of vegan.
I'm the same way. I
don't like labels in general, political,
me neither.
Whatever. It's just immediately just puts people in boxes, or you judge someone based on this label. So, but with food, it's like I love this whole like plant-centric, plant-based, because that's what when I do like a lot of the health stuff where I'm talking, it's like focus around. It's very simple. Don't overthink it. It's actually plants. It's veggies, grains, nuts, seeds, fruits, whatever. Not all these substitute meats. They're fun and whatnot. So when you go like a chef like Tal, what he could do with plants, you're just like,
I know it's bananas. Yeah.
So interesting.
I've been there 1,000 times before knowing Tal. I just realized that, okay, well, of course I know who you are, because, it took me a second to connect. Like you said, he's a dark horse. He's not the kind of guy that's out there going, hey, I'm Chef Tal. You kind of had to.
Like our favorite chef on base.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's amazing. I feel like I've taken up more than enough of your time. But I mean, it was the interesting thing is the connection. So beyond the Dee thing is Dee directly into like Stephen? Where does the connection go from there? I
actually look back at the timeline. I've known Stephen for years, and we played at like a couple of jam nights and whatnot.
Stephen is the sweetest man. Yeah,
he's a sweetheart. It was very funny because it was. I was only supposed to fill in for Sean McNabb for one gig or something.
I love it. It's all your gigs are based on like I was supposed to fill in for something and it turned into a career. Hey kids, if you want to make it in this business, just fill in for somebody for one show and you never need to do anything again.
I think like Sean was going back to, is it Lynch Mob or going back out or something was.
Or Sons of Anarchy. You never know with Sean.
There was, he was double booked and I had just done, and that was actually for like, Ride for Ronnie or something, and I was playing with Bisto Blanco the same day. I was filling in for the bass player from Bisto Blanco, and I actually played. That was insane. I played 2 sets back to back with 2 different bands.
Wow.
Yes, to Bisto because their bass player is actually, the guys,
yeah, I know Chuck. Yeah, Chuck's band. Yeah, they're great. I love them.
They're so fun, and I was like, yeah, sure. A couple, a week or so out from that, it's like, yeah, I'll do that. And then I got called to do Adler for the same show, and I was like, oh shit. So like, are you quick with learning this material? I mean, I have the reputation of being you're lightning speed, clearly.
Well, I don't know about that. I think I'm really good at learning what I'm really excited about, and it's the same as school. Like I was good at the classes that I was interested in, and everything else I was like, but I know better than to take on a gig that I'm not going to make myself excited about. It's just like, well,
important as well because you're not really. I mean, you will deliver. You're a professional, but if your heart's not in it. But yeah, I think I was a machine at that for years because that's all I was really into that, and I was jumping from gig to gig. And
do you read music? Is it anything like that? Tabs for you, or is it all memory?
I can a bit, but I'm completely self-taught. Never had music class in my life. Never. Just which is not right or wrong.
Good for you.
Me regrets not having that kind of educational, but
I don't have it either because like when we talked about whether it's Stephen's a little different because I know all the Guns N' Roses stuff, but Corey Taylor, I just did some fill-in stuff and I went in there and the drummer had charts and I'm just kind of like, no, I don't know that, so I have to rely upon my memory and I have to rely upon my ear.
Like I mean, it's good. I would like to have, like when I look at some of my friends, I'm like, wow, they have that like solid musical education foundation. But again, because my mission in life is so it's like I'm okay being this solid.
Yeah, you're doing just fine without all that. It's got
to be like a virtuoso.
When I watch like, you know, SNL or Kimmel or something like that, and I see the band, as soon as I see them turn like a page, I'm like, oh, well, I'm immediately not qualified for this gig.
So what are you reading?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. They've got like a Maxim magazine from 1993. I don't
know it so well.
yeah. Reading the local paper.
It's beautiful. I have a lot of player friends like that where I'm just like, oh my god, it's incredible. They read like machines, but interesting enough to that point. And we started rambling again.
Oh, ramble on.
What a bass line! Oh my god.
Yeah, it's a great bass line.
With Riverdance, what was so interesting, I was in over my head with that band because it was a 10-piece band from like all over the world. So you've Latin percussionists, you've jazz players in the horn section, you've traditional Irish musicians who've been playing since they're like 2. You know, you've opera trained singers. Everyone is like very musical education background.
Mm-hmm.
They brought me in on bass. I'm like, okay. Because it was, so the Riverdance show we did was called Heartbeat of Home, and it was actually the Riverdance, but it was a modern version. So it had traditional Irish music, then it had like jazz, street, tango, and these are sections. So it's not like songs where they're running into each other and it's an hour and a half. And everyone's reading. And I remember being like, how the fuck I'm going to do this gig? I have to learn it by ear. So I learned to go by ear with headphones and amazing slower down. And because it's like bebop fast in some parts. But funny enough, when it came to, so we did production rehearsals in Dublin, everyone was reading bar me. So it's in me. It's like internal to me at this stage, you know it. And the stage managers decided for aesthetic reasons, no charts on stage, not even iPads. Everyone flipped out. And I was like, it was a big deal.
You're like way ahead of the curve. You're like...
So it was actually, I remember that it was harder to learn and the pressure being in production rehearsals because, they're going bar 17 and section 64 in the I'm like, which part's that?
Yeah. Oh, God.
I'll jump in.
It's so funny because it's eye-opening to me because at first glance watching you play, I just assumed you were like jazz, R&B. I assumed you had like deep roots in that world, but there's something to be said about coming up playing traditional Irish music, whatever that means. I assume you have a bit of that.
I think there's a lot of triplets naturally in us, which is like,
yeah, totally. Yeah, that.
It's funny. I think, just listening. I think it's important. Like, I love a wide variety of music. I think that always shows in a musician. And as bass players, it's great to be able to be flashy, but really it's about pocket and groove and holding it down, So that's, especially if you want to be a working one.
I know. Yeah, you're supposed to be part of the, the structure. Everything's supposed to be built on top of you. You and the drummer are supposed to be there to hold this entire structure up. So, I mean, nothing to say. I mean, obviously the Billy Sheehan's and those guys, I mean, they're a whole other thing, but yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. You're kind of, and there are times where you shine. I've seen you shine on several things. I've seen you with Dee live and I've seen you with Steven live. I've seen you live on several occasions and we just assumed you were like, where'd they get this bass player who clearly played with Prince or something? We didn't know where we assumed.
We had a Dee show. Which one? Did we say the same?
We were on a festival somewhere. We were doing it when you were doing it. So, it's you're very memorable. That's,
the hair.
It's the hair. Yeah, exactly. Well, I really, really appreciate your time. And if you ever need any other giants to be in vegan things, give me a call.
We can be vegan thing, and I need you to take this bass gig.
And to take the bass gig so I could do the vegan thing. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. And I hope we get to cross paths in person one of these days. Because usually if I'm there, that means you're not there. And if you're there, it probably means that I'm not there. But
that needs 2 bass players. It hasn't been done in a while.
There you go. Now we're talking. We could do Big Bottom by the Spinal Taps.
Manifest. Let's manifest. But yes, we will eat vegetables somewhere along the way.
I believe so. Yes. Well, I swore to Tal next time we get out there, we're gonna make a thing of it because I of course have a posse of like-minded people. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, keep me posted, and I hope to see you soon.
You too. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Big love to you and your whole fam. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.